and I'm sure others will join us as we go along. But I want to start by saying thank you so much to everyone for joining us today and for signing up for this training. We are so excited to have all of you, and a huge thank you to our speakers, Matt and Brandon and Madeline for today, and to several other speakers who are on this call who you'll hear from later in the sessions. As a couple of little logistics issues, for starters, please be sure to keep yourself on mute if you're not speaking. In the past, we've had some issues with background noise and things like that, and especially with family at home, we totally understand that the kids and dogs are in the background, but since these are recorded and will live on the website, it would be great to minimize that background noise. That being said, these are meant to be a conversation, and these should be really collaborative sessions. And so we fully encourage you to ask questions, to input your own thoughts or your own experiences. So if there's something you would like to contribute to the conversation, you can either use the raise hand feature in Zoom or go ahead and put a message in the chat that says something like, I have a question, I have a comment, all those good things. And you're welcome to put that into the full group of participants. People can respond there, or we can unmute you and allow you to speak for the whole group. So if you have any questions about these sessions moving forward, let me know. As far as sort of how the rest of the sessions will look, as you should know from the emails, there is 1 hour-and-a-half long session per week for the 6 weeks leading up to the Indigenous Connectivity Summit. And our last session will actually be during the week of the Indigenous Connectivity Summit. So the timing on that session might be a little bit different, but the first 5 weeks are all at the same time. So if you have any issues with the calendar invitation, let me know. And if you aren't able to attend one of these calls, but you still want to make sure you get your certification at the end, please just send me an email. I'll put my email in the chat so that you have it, and we'll make sure that we get you the recording. Leading up to each week's session, you'll see that in the calendar invitation and in the email that I sent you all, there's a link to a web page. It's password protected, but the password is in that email and calendar invitation. And that's where you'll find more information about all of our speakers, the resources that they've provided to you all. And then after the session of that week, you'll find the recording as well. So our speakers have put a ton of effort into the resources that you'll see on that site. We've split them up week by week. So please feel free to reference those throughout these sessions, ask questions about them, check them out ahead of time and afterward. And if for any reason you have issues accessing those, again, send me an email and I'm happy to help you. So I'm gonna pause for one quick second and see if anyone has a logistics question for me before turning it over to Matt and Brandon. Okay, hearing nothing, we'll get started. And my last plug, if you haven't already, please be sure to register for the Indigenous Connectivity Summit starting the week of October 5th, and I'll put that link in the chat as well. And with that, huge thank you to Matt and Brandon. Over to you guys.
Thanks, Katie. So let's see. We're going to be talking today about stories of success during this wonderful global pandemic that we are experiencing. And myself, Matt Rantanen, Brandon Makaava-Ava, and Madeline Redfern will be presenting to you today and interacting with you in questions and answers and general conversation. Madeline will join us in a moment. She is chasing down better signal, as a lot of us have had to do during this pandemic. So I think what we'll do first, just so you know who's who, and I see a lot of familiar faces, but the really cool thing is I also see just about as many unfamiliar faces. And that's what the whole point of this Indigenous Connectivity Summit is, to expand this knowledge base and the group of people that's involved. So I would like Brandon, go ahead and introduce yourself and give 3 to 5 minutes of background and where you come from, where have you been, and what you're up to.
Aloha. Thank you, Matt. Mahalo for giving me this opportunity to speak. Thank you, Internet Society, for putting on this wonderful resource. And, it really has helped our nation a lot by connecting with you folks and connecting with the world and trying to get our people better broadband connection, because it is a human right. My name is Brandon Makaava-Ava. I'm the Deputy Head of State of the nation of Hawaii. Our nation was founded in 1993 when America apologized for the illegal overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom. My head of state, my uncle, Bumpy Kanahele, he helped to organize Hawaiians around learning their rights and we actually took back lands that were formerly Hawaiian national lands. And we founded our land base of Pu'uhonua, Waimanalo back in 1995. We're a little different than federally recognized tribes on the continent. We have no federal recognition as of today. Our whole focus of our nation is actually building towards independence, which actually comes in handy in this time today. We advocate for Hawaiian rights. We advocate for all Indigenous people's rights. We participate in the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues for the last 4 years. We go there and we speak about Indigenous nationality. We talk about Hawaiian national sovereignty. We help to educate our Indigenous brothers and sisters that, you know, federal recognition is okay, but there are other aspects to sovereignty that is not tied to another nation, that we ourselves as Indigenous people, as Aboriginal people, we can become independent. You know, we just have to take those leaps of faith, and our nation has done that. We're not a large nation. We're kind of a smaller group. Our land base is 55 acres, like I said. We established our village back in 1994, and this is actually where we've set up Hawaii's first community broadband network on the island of Oahu in Waimanalo. And we believe that sovereignty today is not just a political question or not just a political statement, but we have to build sovereignty in all of our community and in our political, economic, social, and cultural lives. Internet is a huge part of that. And so when we got together with the Internet Society, with Bert Lum from the state of Hawaii, we were able to build Hawaii's first community broadband network, and it has come in handy during this time. So, mahalo, Matt.
I just realized I'm muted. Okay, so let's see, do we have Madeline yet? I don't think so. I don't see her name in the list. So
she might be on by phone, Matt. Let me try unmuting the person that I think is her.
Okay.
Actually, the person calling in by phone, it's an 867 number. Your connection is not stable enough to unmute, and I think that's Madeline.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Is that you, Madeline?
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Welcome to the call.
Hoping thank you. Sorry, I'm not on Zoom. I'm on the phone. This is the point for the introduction.
Yeah. So go ahead and give 3 to 5 minutes on yourself and kind of your background, where you come from, so we know, where all that knowledge came from and how you've crafted it into who you are today.
Okay. So I'm based here in Iqaluit, Nunavut, and for those who are unfamiliar where that is, it's in the Eastern Arctic, large island next to Greenland. I'm approximately 3 hours direct jet flight from Ottawa, about 4 hours jet flight from Toronto, and I am from this community. I've been back home for about 25 years, just prior to the creation of the territory. And my background is in business, in law, and I really got interested in telecommunications when I was mayor for Iqaluit back in about 2010, because one of the things that I found I really, really needed was being able to connect with my community members, with other communities in my region or in my territory, for advocacy purposes with the federal government, to connect with other pan-Arctic countries and others in North America, Indigenous groups. And I can tell you, unfortunately, in the last sort of 10 years, telecommunications hasn't greatly improved. There has been some quite significant investments made by my federal government, which primarily ends up going to the Telesat, which is a satellite company, because we're satellite served, independent. We do not have any fiber. And the costs are astronomical. My telephone bill is probably about a couple $100 a month. My internet bill on top of that is approximately $500. My cable bill is another about $100. My cell phone is probably about another couple hundred. So I'm spending over $1,000 a month just on my basic telecommunication requirements, which is quite common. There are literally people who here in my community that, of course, want, to be connected or need to be connected, and are having to make the tough choice of whether or not they're going to buy food for their family or connected. I mean, it's a real challenge, and we don't have, unfortunately, unlimited telecommunications either. So it means that there's usually someone in the house, whoever pays the bills ends up being, the telecommunications or internet traffic cop. It causes people to go into debt. It causes, tremendous sort of like internal family conflicts. So it was one of the big issues that I needed to get familiar with as a politician, and to advocate for improvements. As I said, despite the millions of dollars that the federal government pumps into subsidies here, it's still subpar. I mean, there are places in rural China, or even in the camps in the migrant camps in the Middle East, that have better internet connectivity than we do here. So that just gives you, why I've become so passionate about telecommunications. And now I'm out of politics formally as an elected official. I have a couple of different businesses that I'm involved with, that are working on some telecommunications projects. One is to create an internet service, internet exchange point that is much smaller, that can work in communities that are of 10,000 or less than 100,000. Just manage the traffic within our community better, to make it more affordable, to make it faster. And then lastly, I've got some other sort of things in the work that, just trying to find any way to make life bearable on the telecommunications front. So there you go.
Thank you, Madeline. Wow, excellent. So it's an honor to be, kicking off this this first event here this year for Indigenous Connectivity Summit with ISOC, and I'm gonna play moderator a little bit today, just so we can keep the flow going. My background. So I'm a recovering graphic designer. I have worked in telecom, starting my 20th year, October 7th of this year, and have been working with the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association that long, in 20 federally recognized tribes, building high-speed wireless fixed microwave, point-to-point, point-to-multipoint stuff, played around with mesh, played around with TV white space, played around with pretty much everything that's been available to us to use, learned by trial by fire, and have been exposed to, sort of crazy geography and opportunity and politics and different things along the way. 17 years ago or so, I guess I stepped into the policy space when we were trying to get E-rate for tribes, and there was no language in the E-rate program to accept tribes. So we went to DC, myself and Michael Peralta, who is no longer with us, went to DC and campaigned for tribes to be able to have access to E-rate. And that was my introduction into how policy could affect change to actual physical network building, and the interaction between that federal government entity, some of the state government entities, and what we were actually doing on the ground in the tribal communities. And so it was, it was an eye opener. And And at some point I thought, wow, these people are really accessible. It's so easy to just come into these offices and talk to them. Then, you know, after you did the work, and we got really lucky, we became an exception to the rule for E-rate. You know, after you did the work, then you realized, well, this is going to be a lot harder. Yeah, they're easy to access, but they're very hard to influence or at least educate. So, you know, I've grown that over the years. My interaction with the policy space, I've worked with the National Congress of American Indians as the co-chair for the Tech and Telecom subcommittee for, I think I'm starting my 8th year, and I've been attending for almost 10. I chaired Native Public Media's board for 6 years and vice chaired it for 3 more. You know, great experience there, cut my teeth on a lot of policy there, learned from good folks, and you know, interacted with other organizations while I was there. I'm currently on the American Indian Policy Institute at Arizona State University. I advise the Western Governors Association on rural and tribal broadband, as well as the California Broadband Council, and a few other things. But essentially, you know, getting to grow up in this space, wearing a policy hat, but at the same time, you know, having climbed a tower, having, you know, put the internet together at the tower space, having brought internet into tribal homes, having played around with research and development and all the technologies that are available to us, including the power solutions of solar, some wind, and some alternative energy sources to be able to support this on mountaintops in regions where there are no facilities or resources, has really kind of shaped who I am in this space. And so, you know, welcome everybody today. I'm looking at 2 whole pages of people on Zoom, which is phenomenal for the first event for this year, and excited. Thank you very much for ISOC and everybody that put this together. I know almost all of you, and appreciate everything that you've done. You obviously are making inroads into opportunity for Native nations, and we really appreciate that. So I will move into just sort of a phase of what has worked and what hasn't worked during COVID-19. I mean, we are all faced with the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. Unless you've been living under a rock or hanging out in a tree, you know, you've been exposed to this on some level, and life has altered a bit. You know, by design, I tend to live socially distanced. I have 35 acres outside of a California city, and I'm 30 minutes from a grocery store on purpose. But some of you may be stuck in an office where you have to deal with this all the time, or you may be commuting from home where you don't have internet and you only have a cell phone. You know, how has this affected your home life, and how has this affected your you know, your network opportunities and your connectivity to the rest of the world, or your job or your education? So what we're going to do is we're going to start with I'm going to start with Madeline, because I'm in fear of losing Madeline's connectivity. Madeline, can you basically just kind of give a list of, or an account of, you know, success stories of what your community has been able to do because of COVID-19? You did X and this really helped, or, you know, solving some of your connectivity issues during this, which may not look that much different than your normal everyday to day being cut off, but you know what I mean? Apply it to COVID-19 and let us know what you've done.
Okay, well, I can tell you that one of the main service providers, Northwest Tel, as a response of COVID and having people, you know, having to primarily stay at home, work from home, deal with isolation, did make a request to the federal government to be able to provide residential customers 200 gigabits of data for the same price as they would have been paying for 100. So that, you know, gave a little bit of an extra buffer. There was no additional sort of concession made for business. So it was just trying to sort of help families be more connected. So I would say that that was one good sort of, I guess, initial concession that was made. It's, you know, nonetheless, the desire of family members to, you know, to eat up all that sort of extra data went really quickly. That's part of the thing, is when you provide more, sometimes you don't necessarily, you know, spread that as well over a course of a month as one could.
So clarification, Madeline, that was 100 megabits and 200 megabits, not gigabits, right?
Oh, sorry. Yes, my
Okay.
apologies.
No, it's all right. I just wanted to make sure, because that would be awesome if you went to 200 gigabits.
No. I was dreaming in Technicolor. I'm
Right.
hot. I'm like in an overheated office.
Oh, goodness.
My brain cells are just, yes, you're absolutely right.
Well, you probably shouldn't come visit me in Southern California. We're going to hit 110 this weekend, and it'll be a little toasty. So how about in your community? How about, you know, just the hardship of getting people connected during this time? Is there, you know, different rules and regulations? Are you adhering to different protocols now?
Well, now I'm glad that you asked that question, because for our community members who do not have internet at home, they were really reliant on what's called a community access program that runs out of our local library. And so with COVID, everything shut down. So it meant that those who were most, you know, marginalized and already, you know, having a hard time connecting, especially, you know, with anyone via the internet, had no access. And the conditions to sort of like, you know, return to sort of the community access program really only became available again about a month ago. But there's still social distancing sort of being placed. So the computers were, of course, around a table, like a circular table. And so the capacity has been reduced by about 50%, even, you know, today with the loosening up of some of the regulations. So it's been really hard and tough. Being a satellite dependent community, as I said, even with the extra sort of data cap increase, if the weather goes down at all, cloud, rain, not only in Nunavut, but in Saskatchewan, where we are connected to with hardware equipment, literally means that there's just, you know, virtually no access or no internet. So we operate often in sort of the red and critical conditions, and so things work, and then all of a sudden you can't pay for your gas, you can't pay for food, you can't get money out of the bank. That's the level of sort of vulnerability, even pre-COVID. But it seems that there's a lot more people on the internet. The choke points are more exaggerated. The frustrations of trying to work from home and not being able to be connected. It's been a real challenge, and I've heard, you know, often the same complaints, you know, in Southern Canada. It's just definitely harder to do what you need to do working remotely.
Very good. Thank you very much, Madeline. And thank you for enduring, you know, a very hot office, which is not your normal environment to survive this. So I'm going to shift over to Brandon, and you know, Brandon, you have a unique situation. You have a giant gate that keeps everybody out. And, you know, what have you done behind that giant gate to make things better during COVID-19?
Well, you know, thanks to ISOC, thanks to DBED and the state of Hawaii through Brett Lum, last year at last year's Indigenous Connectivity Summit, we was able to build Hawaii's first community broadband network. And we've been just going through the motions of developing and trying to figure out how to run our own ISP, become our own internet service provider. And it's been eye-opening. It's been a challenge at times, but I don't know how we would survive in this COVID. I I don't know how we would survive in this environment without this internet connection. I mean, it's so vital to everything that is available to us today because of distance learning issues. For the first 4 weeks, the public schools in the state of Hawaii will go totally virtual. So if we didn't have this internet system before, it'd be impossible for our kids to get to school. They'd have to put themselves in a car and go, drive to like a Starbucks or to like, a McDonald's, or possibly, go to a family member's house to do their homework, or to just get online. And doing this kind of distance learning stuff is already hard enough. But uprooting yourself from your home and taking yourself to somewhere else, there is no way our kids would be able to, stay up with what is going on. They'd be too distracted. And we finding out on our own that, it's still a challenge, even with our internet in place, and our kids being able to set up their own, stations where they can learn and stuff like that. But I couldn't imagine what we would be doing without our broadband system. Like Katie mentioned in the chat, I'm also an alumni of this training session. So last year, me, our head of state, Bumpy Kanahele, some of our people from our village participated in last year's training. So all of this, this was all Greek to me last year, and it still somewhat is, and because we dealing with so much different issues because we're nation building. But I think without the support and stuff from the people that I met in this training, from the Internet Society directly, people like Matt, people like Marielle, people like Bert, all of these people are helping us to grow. And this goes back to independence. During this COVID pandemic, we've had discussions with other tribal nations. We've had discussions with other indigenous peoples all around the world that are just getting trashed on. They're just getting forgotten. The United States has an obligation to these tribes, and they're not fulfilling them. And so they're left to figure it out on their own. In our instance, because we are not federally recognized, this is our world. This is what we live in. This is what we know. We know that if we don't do it ourselves, nobody is going to come here to help. No government agency is going to come help save us. So that has been kind of our strength through this whole pandemic. I mean, it's not ideal, and we're not, I'm not talking from a place of entitlement. I'm just talking from a place where us as Indigenous people, as Aboriginal people, we need to step outside of the box, and we need to go back to what our ancestors used to do before during this time, and figure out how to live independently. And having the internet access is a key, And so how do we go through that process of even getting there? And so, like, for me, I'm not a tech person at all. I have an iPhone, I have iPads and all of this, but I don't have the experience like Matt Brentanen. I don't have the experience like Marielle Triggs. This is all brand new to us, but I'm in this realm together with them. 1 year later, I can sit down and have a conversation about our broadband. I can have a conversation about how much gigs we have coming in, how our bees are lining up to our houses. I can have these conversations because for 1 year, we've been going through this experience and this maturation process of learning and adapting. And I think it's something that all Indigenous peoples have the ability to do. This is not just for technical people. We have to think of broadband and internet as a vital human rights issue, and a vital issue that we as Indigenous peoples, if we're going to start anywhere with independence, let's begin there. We don't need to get into the politics. We don't need to get into all these different things, but broadband access is a human right. And we need to further that right. And we want to be here as an example for Indigenous peoples that we can do this with the right type of help and the right type of resources, you know, I think what Internet Society is doing with empowering Indigenous communities to do it themselves is powerful, because it's not like last year they came in and, you know, we got all these geniuses working on all these things, and then we were just sitting back and watching them and handing them the hammer and handing them the screw gun and all these things. We were right there with them. They were teaching us on the ground, hands-on, everybody, our whole nation, our whole village was there at that point with all these internet experts, and we were learning. And so 1 year later, I mean, we just went from this, you know, limited capacity to transitioning towards full independence in internet. And I think these are the types of lessons we're learning during COVID, is that, you know, there's not always going to be somebody there to help you. So we have to figure out our own ways, but if we can network with the right people, I think we can all get through this and come out stronger on the back end. Sorry, man, I don't know if I answered your question or not. I get preachy sometimes, but
It's all right. You and I run on tangents, man.
Yeah.
So I'll just kind of rein it back in a little bit. To what has your nation done during this time to, you know, to solve a problem internally? I mean, I know a lot of people are out of work. You know, that some of the resources are running shy. I mean, obviously Hawaii has invested all of its efforts into the tourism trade, and now there's, you know, the tourism stops. So how are you coping with that kind of stuff? And is the internet playing a role in that?
Yeah, I mean, the internet is playing a huge role. It is one of our number one resources now at the nation. I mean, it always has been, because, you know, when you take the kind of stance that our nation has took, where we're advocating for total independence from the United States, where we are exposing the injustices on a daily that is happening to the Hawaiian people here in the state of Hawaii. The internet is key, because nobody's going to cover that story for us. But because of social media, because of our own internet access, now we online 24/7. They cannot stop us. So we utilizing this time to educate a lot of people, especially you know, in regards to the tourism industry, that is actually, you know, people may think that tourism helps Hawaii and it helps the state, and it does, but it's on the backs of the Native Hawaiian people. Tourism has become a big block to Hawaiian rights, because money will always trump our rights, and tourism has always been the huge elephant in the room that has always blocked the door for the Native Hawaiian, because nobody wants to come vacation in paradise and feel guilty of what's happening to us. So it was a distraction for us. It was hard to actually get our message out there, because we're getting bogged down by the tourism propaganda. But now that tourism is not in the picture, and they're struggling to save themselves, it has allowed us to explore different economies, to explore different ways of you know, making up this huge deficit that the state has, because all their eggs was in the tourism basket. Now developing these new economies, a lot of these new economies is not just agriculture, which is a basic that we'll always bring up whenever we're talking about alternative economies. But now that we have this connection with ISOC, that we have this window into broadband, into innovation, we're looking at innovation as a huge key for our economy here in Hawaii. And so helping to have these discussions on our internet through Zoom, with these other peoples that are trying to figure out the same thing, because the economy was messed up globally because of the pandemic. I think without our internet system, we wouldn't be able to have these separate meetings and building these new relationships that we're building today. And it has been key for our growth, you know, not just in the internet sector, but just in general. How do we stay connected to our people? Because during these times, people can feel so alone, you know. People are losing jobs. They're losing, you know, they're losing their grip on reality, because it's like every day is the same thing. You're at home, you're stuck at home, you have the kids going to school on the computer, you have yourself, you got to keep, some people are still working from home. People can lose it. And so having our internet connection and having a stable presence online, I think is key for not just our nation, but for our people in the state of Hawaii in general.
Very good. Thank you. So I'll give a slight account of what's going on in the lower 48 of the US and some of the things around the Southwest itself. So, COVID-19 has obviously restricted travel. Most of us have, our companies we work with, tribes we work with have banned travel, or we have really tight restrictions on, health behavior, moving back and forth in and out of our tribal communities, in and out of our states. And especially going from community to community, we're being very careful on those fronts, trying not to spread this around. So we've really limited ourselves to online participation in a lot of national events and national policymaking and programs. And, as a culture, in Native American culture, very face-to-face, very in-person meeting, trust relationship building, and very grounded in our methods when we talk with each other. And that becomes really hard when you're locked in your bedroom trying to be on a Zoom call and trying to do this, and you don't have good service, and you maybe can't run your videos, and you can't see the expression on somebody's face. I know some of us have really good poker faces out there, but it's nice to get a reaction every once in a while when you make a comment and see somebody's eyes light up, or see somebody, look inquisitive about something because, wow, I didn't know that. And you can see that on their face, that you're engaging. It's complicated, right? So in Southern California and in many places in the Southwest as well across the country, we've heard of and have participated in things such as like Wi-Fi drive-ins. So taking a general area, parking lot area that's common use for a tribal community, and lighting that up with free internet so that people can come in their cars, stay socially distanced, tie into their schools, tie into their jobs, tie into their health resources and their communications with others. High capacity at a free value. Just please stay social distanced and manage yourself accordingly and according to your tribe's requests. And we know that not every home is connected to internet yet. Yeah, we have some of these homes connected to internet through some of our different programs, but not all of them. So during this time, solving that problem has become difficult. We do not currently go into a tribal home to do an installation anymore because of the risk of spread of COVID-19. So whether we bring it into the house, whether we get it when we're in the house, whether we transfer it from house to house, these are all complexities that tribal governments have varying levels of safety around, and it's made it very difficult to be able to do installations during this time. So one of the things that's come out of this is the tribe actually offering up one of their utilities workers that they trust has been following their guidelines, that the community trusts to have been following their guidelines, and even testing to make sure that they're negative on COVID-19 coronavirus. And they actually do the 5 to 7 minutes of the installation that goes on when we do a new house installation. So that's one of the things that has come around. And really what it's done is it's opened up an opportunity for that utilities person to learn a little bit about telecom and learn a little bit more about the network that serves their people. So we're starting to see, 2 or 3 people in a community say, oh, I'd like to participate in that. We're starting to see a little bit of a resurgence in interest in how the internet works, and especially now that they have a little bit more time on their hands. We are, and oddly enough, you don't ever let a good emergency go to waste. I mean, that sounds kind of morbid, but when people shift their thought process because of an emergency, and they opened up their funding restrictions from, this very narrow path of what they're thinking to, a greater scope of the community getting access to their funds and their opportunities, that is when the time to strike, effectively and efficiently is. It's really crucial to get people that are very strict in their ways to understand that, look, during this time of a pandemic, you are opening up your restrictions. Let's look at those restrictions post-pandemic now, preemptively trying to understand whether or not they make sense, whether or not they are actually restrictions outside of a pandemic for people actually getting funding, whether or not you want to change the scope of your funding and your opportunity moving forward. So this is one of the things that's happened in the policy space. We've seen a lot of wiggle room appear in application processes with funders and with some solutions. We've been able to say, we've been able to push a little bit on E-rate and get that wireless connection that supports libraries, schools, and Head Start programs to be able to be broadcast out into a parking lot, to be able to support the area around the educational facility. That's unheard of in the E-rate world. They are talking about trying to figure out how to actually use the connection from E-rate into a community to be able to deploy to non-educational entities like homes and things like that, but for the purpose of education. So that's under review at some level. And whether or not that'll happen, we don't know, but at least it's being thought about. So some of these things are starting to open people's eyes to the change that should probably happen if we're going to connect the rest of the folks that aren't connected to the internet in this timeline. And not to be selfish, but when you have a group of people building an entire network like the Tribal Digital Village Network or Red Spectrum in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, or many of the other networks that are being built around Indigenous communities. Selfishly, this is really a lot of time you can focus on towers and upgrades to your system and capacity building for your network to be able to expand and support some of these communities where you've been building on top of something and just expanding it as you go. Now you can actually go in and do rebuilds. Now you can actually go in and do, huge enhancements. When we've been tied down from being in an office and we've been tied down from being in close quarters, we can work out in the field. We can work out at tower construction sites and do different things in the field that are not so restrictive and allow us to get a lot more opportunity for our communities. And as we open up the opportunity to get back in the home, now all of a sudden we have more capacity at the tower to be able to feed the people. We have more opportunity. Maybe we have more access points hung on the tower. We have more frequencies in use and better opportunity for moving forward and faster and more efficient deployment in that space. So those are some of the things that have happened around me in Southern California, around some of the tribes in the United States. And interestingly enough, there's been a lot of private funding. I mean, there's a lot of CARES Act funding. There's a lot of COVID branded funding. There's a lot of expansion of programs, realizing that there's people not connected to what they need to connect to. But there has been a lot of really amazing private philanthropy, direct outreach, very large sums of money passing around and supporting efforts to get people connected. So it's impressive. Don't let this emergency go to waste. Make sure that you communicate all of your concerns and work with organizations to better understand opportunity. So I'll wrap my section there, and then I think what we'll request is that we can put this out now to a little bit more of a generalized conversation, as we tend to do in these sessions. It looks like we have half the session left. We have a full 45 minutes left. And, we'd like to bring in a little bit more back and forth dialogue and direct questions from others. So please use your methods of communication, the chat, and I believe the raise the hand function, so that we can keep this organized to be able to have a bit of a conversation. Go ahead, Brandon.
Can I ask the first question?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So, when you're talking about the funding and stuff opening up for more of these projects because of COVID and stuff, I know before a lot of it was, hard to access because people just didn't understand the need for it. But now that people understand the need, what do you think the path is towards, like, for Indigenous peoples to kind of get involved and to get in this sector? And where do you think they should start?
In requesting funding or being
Yeah.
involved with the actual fund making? Okay.
Yeah, requesting funding and trying to, because this all takes funding, and that's kind of like the primary thing. I mean, I think a lot of us, we want internet access. It's just, how does that happen? Because, in our situation before, we tried to do this on our own, and we got told, this is going to be $200,000 to bring fiber optic from the highway to our village. And then come to find out, when we work with the state, and then when we get all these, these barriers out of the way, it didn't cost us anything, So, but how do other Indigenous peoples, like, how do they start this whole process of, because I was on this panel before talking about community broadband networks, and the biggest question they had was, how did you guys start? How can we do this here?
Yeah. So we do have a session specifically on that for the Indigenous Connectivity Summit trainings. Week 4 has been flagged by Katie. So that'll drill down into that, and folks will be able to really get into it. But, in general, there are several programs at the federal level. There are programs at your state level. There are private foundations at your local level, probably your island level, and then maybe even Hawaii-wide level. And then there are private funders that look to support these types of things. So there's quite a wide variety of things to look at. There are also restrictions. The restrictions change depending on who you're working with and what that money is tied to. And so, for example, in Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association received 350 Chromebooks to give out to their Native students that don't have access to a computer. It will be their computer for life, and they use it for school. They use it for whatever they want. And that was given out through the California Emerging Technology Fund. So this is a fund and a management of a fund that was developed when 2 phone companies merged in California, or in the nation of the United States. And in California, there would be people left out of that. So there was a pot of money put to the side that said, okay, this pot of money has to serve folks that do that. They're also tied to Frontier Communications, and Frontier had an obligation when they bought Verizon's landlines in California. I mean, this is all complex stuff, but when Frontier bought Verizon's landlines in California for internet, and took over that service, there was going to be a group of people that weren't served in that. So they had to carve off some of the money from that and give some sort of an allocation. So what they did was they carved off money for devices. So we were granted funding there. So that's sort of the complexity of where things start to evolve. Private funders, so it's where you tell your story. And it's one of the things that you and I love to do. Like it or not, getting up and telling your story. And I think Dara can chime in on this. Telling your story is half the battle. Getting the story out there to dispel the myths, to educate the people, to open their eyes to what is actually happening, and then just to give them a window into, what's out there. Dara, you want to tag that for a second?
Sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, and I would just say specifically, a lot of the approach and the work that I do, and when I'm thinking about how to tell my story, it's one, knowing your audience of who are you talking to and what are their priorities, and how can kind of your story mold into what you think they need to hear in order to be moved by it, whether that be emotionally, whether that means that they need numbers and they need to understand how much it's going to cost, or whether that means they need to understand like what the possibilities are that you can do with the resources that you're wanting to bring into a community. And then also doing it in a way that doesn't sound scary. I know a lot of times people are just really nervous about working with tribes for reasons that we don't have to go into now, but a lot of it is just kind of making it very relatable and very accessible of like, yeah, this is a normal thing and I'm going to walk you through it and it's not going to be scary. So yeah, just kind of a little bit of hand holding, I think.
Yeah. So telling your story, has always, or telling our story, has the Tribal Digital Village Network. It's 20 tribes, it's Southern California, it's high-speed microwave, point-to-point, fixed broadband service, fiber at both ends now. You know, that's the gist of it. But, you know, telling the story of how it got created and how we had a summer youth academy where the kids had GPS units and binoculars and hiking boots and went from mountaintop to figure out where this network would start and where it would live in the future. How did we see that reservation from this reservation over county land? Getting involved in the nitty gritty of it and just the community support of it, and the fact that this is a new thing and people are embracing it. And you know, these are people that will be on the internet and being consumers and voters and different things. It's really valuable to get that point across to lawmakers, to funders, to all of those different folks. Every time we tell our story, a door opens. It's not necessarily a pile of money. It's not a computer. It may be a connection to somebody that knows somebody else that wants to get involved with this, that wants to support something like this. I mean, it's phenomenal how much traction you get when you actually get out there and just explain what's going on in your situation and tell your story. So I think that's the biggest thing. Know how to tell your story. And Dara's dead on. Know your audience. You know, does this group ever do this type of funding? You know, if they don't do that type of funding and you're still going to go in anyway, is this something that's in their individual board members' thought process? Do they care about this issue? Align yourself with success. Don't go crashing into a wall that's a guaranteed no. Don't waste your time. Your time is really valuable. You know, spend your time wisely. Find people that are aligned with who you are, aligned with, you know, what your community does, aligned with, you know, the politics or the cultural aspects or just the, you know, picking up humanity aspect of what you're doing. That's the easiest way to align yourself with funding. And then it's a lot of research. And thank goodness, Brandon, you've got internet now. You can sit there and cruise around and find all that stuff. So we had somebody actually that worked on that Frontier ETF stuff in the chat. So make sure and take advantage, communicate with each other. The chat and the people that are on this call are now new resources. That's one of the things that the Indigenous Connectivity Summit really grows in this space, is the connections to each other, the networking with each other, the fact that now I can call Brandon can call me. You know, we have this huge, I mean, I can call Sally Braun and ask her a question. I can call Bill Murdoch and ask a question. I can call on Dara. I mean, we all know the same space on, you know, one level or another or multiple levels, and we can help each other out and grow this community. I mean, this is way bigger than last year already in this Zoom. So, you know, we're just seeing that growth now. And as we exponentially grow the resources in the network, you know, this is where the value comes in. And others, I mean, I see the chat flying by on my right-hand side of my screen. It's actually filling up pretty fast. Other people will know funding opportunities in your space that you may not be aware of. And that's how I've learned about a lot of the things. I wanted to open up really fast and ask if Madeline is still available. Madeline, are you still on?
Yes, I am.
Cool.
I'm here.
Did you want to talk a little bit more specifically about maybe funding opportunities up north, or opportunities that you could maybe align with? You know, during COVID, have things opened up that are, you know, COVID specific? Are there opportunities that people should be taking advantage of?
So there, long time ago, the federal government announced that there would be funding available through CRTC, our Canadian Telecommunications Radio. And they did extend the deadlines. There's just been announcements about some funding commitments for Yukon and NWT. Nunavut, we're still waiting to find out what's been approved under those funds. There's also massive political sort of commitments with additional money through another federal department called Innovation, Science, and Economic Development. There's also some funding available potentially through the National Resource Council. There was a little bit of funding that was available through CIRA, Canadian Internet Registry. for minor small projects, which the North could have participated in probably more. And the big thing right now in the push is, as you just said earlier, is telling your story, and telling your story to decision makers, which includes, senior bureaucrats, includes politicians. Our member of parliament is really highlighting, the need for massive investment, as is our senator. And the best thing you can do is make your business case, whether it's a particular project, or the overall sort of massive ask that is probably required. So I know my Inuit organization, one of the things that they're doing is identifying where the infrastructure gaps are, and trying to put forward, the very large monumental ask that would probably be associated with it. Ideally, the large number tends to always scare government. That large number needs to be sort of broken down. This is what it would cost if, you did, IXPs, or you did a little bit of investment in upgrading some local infrastructures and training. Then it's sort of bite-sized chunks that decision makers, can better understand and defend. Because that's the other thing that's really important, is being able to help politicians or help a government explain how those numbers were generated, the costs of investing, and the benefits, not only for a local community, but for the region, but also nationally. Because you've got to be able to, convince someone, let's say we sometimes say soccer mom, down in some urban center in some suburbia, that, that is a good investment, good use of taxpayer funds, and that there's the whole concept, someone said earlier, of telecommunications being a universal right, being able to connect, the value, that it has in payback for economic development, for education, for healthcare, something that, your regular Canadian or your regular citizen can wrap their head around because they can relate to it. So there's not only, the money, that there are pots of money out there. And I always find that there's the technical sort of ask and the dollars associated with it. But as you said, tell your story along with it. So tell your story to get access to that money or open up new pots of money. Tell your story to explain that why you're not accessing it. Sometimes the criteria don't work. It doesn't understand your reality, your cost, or your, a business, or the living cost, and that you need, that extra support that sometimes that may not exist and can be opened up. So COVID has highlighted a lot of those discrepancies and exaggerated it. But there really, really is also the opportunity to say, we shouldn't be widening the gap, we should be closing the gap, or that we should be prioritizing the investments in regions or in groups where, we've been underserved. And that should be the COVID priority, is actually putting the money in our underserved regions and our underserved peoples.
Excellent. Thank you, Madeline. So there's a couple of questions that have been flying around, sort of around policy, and how do you, I guess for lack of a better term, how do you take big city policies and make sure that they work for, rural, tribal, and sovereign groups? And that's a very complicated, big, huge, monstrous question that we probably could have an entire session on, which I think we kind of do have a session on in policy later. And Katie probably put it in the chat already, because I can't even see the chat. It's going by so fast, it's blurry. Essentially, and Jane put out about case studies. Case studies are key. Numbers are key. Dara said that earlier too. Knowing knowing your space and what works in your space when you are talking about policy and you are looking at opportunity, being able to convey the actual specifics about how it's going to affect your demographic, your group of people, how this fund or this rule change or, you know, this shift in thought process is going to make it better for this community, connect them, get them online, the human right that we should have of access to the internet. You know, how does that translate? It doesn't hurt to know what that policymaker or that policymaking group sees as a success, and know your audience, really. So know what they feel is a win for them. Figure out how to align your solution with something that is a win for them, and things go a lot smoother. I mean, it's a complicated, weird, kind of vague answer, but there are ways to align yourself with the thought process of others that may not be exactly how you think, but you can apply some of their thought process and their rationale to your situation, and you can craft your story and craft your request to be able to sort that out. And I hope that helps a little bit. We have Gabriel, would you like to add a few things?
Thank you, Matt. It's nice to see you. I haven't seen you in quite a bit.
Yeah.
Some old friends and some new ones. Yeah, I know you kind of touched on the Southwest, where I maybe have a little more experience working in the Southwest. There's one thing that we've found very beneficial is collaborating with the county governments, the state governments, and everybody, and kind of the school districts, working there in New Mexico and in South Dakota, looking at how we can all kind of put our CARES money together to build a larger system to be able to service different aspects of what our needs are. Like the beginning of the pandemic, it was at the end of the school year. One of the big issues we were facing was remote learning. So there was a lot of launches for just like you're saying, digital drive-ins, essentially that for the students to be able to upload and download their work. I know ITD, DRC, I believe they're called, and a few others have come to the call to really help. And there's a lot of movement there, but I can't stress enough the assistance of collaboration between the multiple governments, jurisdictions, or however you want to define it, to really move it forward, because you could really leverage your funds to do a lot bigger project. But that's all I want to add, Matt, and thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. So working with state governments, working with local governments is key. And Mark said in the chat, and I'll have to add to that as well, public comment, right? So our governments reach out to every community within their base, and they ask for opinion. They ask for your side of the story. They ask for your testimony to understand if their rulemaking is going to help or hurt or, you know, do enough in the efforts to change the environment, in telecom, in a number of different things. That public comment is your space for your voice to be on the record. Some governments work better than others at reflecting on those comments or incorporating those comments into their actual process. Some agencies work better than others, but it is your opportunity to get on the public record, to share your situation, to help influence and support or correct the path of a lawmaking or a policy making that could be being developed. And without your voice, and I can tell you from personal experience over the last 19 years, most of the time I am the only Native representative, and I'm almost always the only rural representative in the room when I am making a comment at the California Public Utilities Commission, at a bunch of different places. Now, I will say in the last 3 or 4 years, California has been very interactive with its tribes. That has grown over a period of years, over a decade. And we have a lot more representation in the room than we used to. But, you know, we have that situation where you come up to talk on the microphone and you tell your story, and it's the only account of rural and tribal in that space. And then you look behind you in line, and there's 20 people in line, and they all kind of look like the same people. They're all in a suit, and they all have their thing to say. They come up and they're representing industry, and they're representing you know, commercial entities and things that may not serve your community. And if you don't go out there and put your voice into your thought process and your community's needs are not incorporated into the rulemaking or into the process of developing that rulemaking, what you get is corporate lawyer 1 reading his paragraph, corporate lawyer 2 reading his paragraph, corporate lawyer 3 reading his paragraph. And if you go to enough of these meetings, you can almost recite their paragraph for them, because it is a bulletproof paragraph statement that they've gone through with a fine-tooth comb that they present at every public open opportunity, so that they are always on the record and always in, you know, always supporting themselves. You know, always look out for number 1. Well, get out there and look out for number 1. Get out there and put your voice into that space, because then they actually have to say, okay, we have 20 of these suited people that read this paragraph every week, but look, we have somebody from community that's talking about, you know, 19 tribes or 20 tribes, and they're interacting together, and it's just cool. Like, wow, this is neat. We didn't even know this was out there. Let's learn more about this. Let's reach out to this person and figure things out. So, you know, that's a really key piece of what's going on in the policy space and how you can make a difference. Now, it looks a little weird on Zoom to do this. I will grant you that. To do policy making stuff, to attend a you know, a state meeting or something like that, I've always thought the people that dial in on phone are at such a disadvantage, and they're not designed to do Zoom. The benefit of COVID, if there is one at all, is that it's forced everybody to have this kind of an interactive outlet. Whether they liked it or not, they now have this interactive outlet where you can now participate from remote and actually be seen, which wasn't the case. It was a room full of people and an open microphone on a teleconference unit that typically was overlooked and underheard in the meeting. So it's it's a good time to have that shift happen. There's a question. I'm only going to touch the surface of this, but somebody's asking a question on whether or not SpaceX and Starlink satellites will impact communities who run their own networks. And the answer is yeah. Whether that's a good impact or a bad impact, we're not exactly sure yet. Whether the price point is something that is going to support what we're doing or affect what we're doing, we don't exactly know. The beta test is coming soon. It's in the northern hemisphere, the northern United States, and then Canada will be some of the test bed for that. And you can actually go on that site. I don't remember the link, but you can go on that site and actually sign up for beta testing if you're in the right space. A low Earth orbit satellite solution, of which we used to have 3 in play, I think now there's only 1, is a great opportunity to fill in some of the gaps where there is no fiber, where there's no access for folks. It may be some competition for your network if their price point comes to a reasonable level where, you know, maybe one of your subscribers would shift over to their service. It does not have the latency of geosynchronous old school satellites. It's not that far from Earth in relation to the traditional satellites. So it will behave like, you know, a signal from here to Inuvik. It shouldn't be much different. So you have to expect that will play a role in the future, and whether it's a good role or a bad role, I think, you know, there's an opportunity for us to maybe influence that. Those of us who know those people making that opportunity happen, those of us who have access to, you know, the higher ups that are kind of thought processing what that should look like. I mean, you know, let them know that people are in need of opportunity, and that need should be affordable and available. So hopefully I touched on that one well enough. Katie, can you point out another question? They've been flying by so fast, I think I've missed them.
Sure thing. And so I think I've answered some of them in the chat or in private conversation, so please ping me if I've missed you. One that I don't think we explicitly hit yet is from Austin, who asked, could you all give an example of a policy win that you've had that had a direct impact in helping your networks to grow? So I think we've talked a little bit about examples and things, but it'd be really cool to hear, you know, Brandon, from your perspective, even hearing about sort of like the apology that you received from the US as the nation of Hawaii. Matt and Madeline, you both, I'm sure, have an infinite number of examples of things you guys have worked on in the past, or even, I know we have a lot of participants who work on policy issues as well. It'd be great for you guys to put some of your own examples in the chat.
Yeah, yeah, as far as like wins for us, I think one of the huge things that actually happened at last year's Indigenous Connectivity Summit was our head of state, Dennis Pompikanahele, was able to have a one-on-one discussion in front of everybody in the room with one of the people from the FCC, and was able to explain to them that the Hawaiian people fall outside of the tribal priority window. This tribal priority window was actually opened up for the first time by the FCC to Native Indigenous nations on the continent. And Hawaii was not included because we're not federally recognized. But by, just having that discussion there, they were able to actually look into it deeper. And we've had, more discussions here at the state. Bert Lum actually had a panel in front of the state Senate to actually discuss this with Department of Hawaiian Homelands here. And, without these interventions at these functions, we would still be left out as Hawaiians. At least now we have like a toe in the door to actually see how we could, further and get into this priority window, because it's a huge, it's a huge thing that not too many people are talking about it. Dara has been talking about it all over the place on Instagram, and that's how a lot of people have been learning about it. But we don't actually know the significance of this priority window, and that we, as Native nations, we need to jump on that. But as Hawaiians, we don't even get any type of access. But now that it is known out there, now that we have brought it to DHHL's attention, even if we miss the window, we still out there that we're saying that we would like to have access to this open spectrum, that a lot of it was actually claimed by the University of Hawaii. So maybe we might not make the window, but now we can have a direct discussion with University of Hawaii and ask them, what are you doing with all this spectrum? Why do you have the right to claim all this spectrum over our lands? Maybe you should give some of that to our people. So that was, that to us, because we're new to this thing, we weren't in the policy window, spectrum for that long, but this was actually kind of a win for us to bring that up to the FCC, to put them and make them aware that Hawaiians are being left out of this priority window.
Yeah, and then sometimes the approach, Brandon, could be, we understand that University of Hawaii owns the spectrum, over the whole island, and in this space, and is there an opportunity where we could maybe do a carve out where we, over nation of Hawaii, we could actually utilize that? And, you could ask, the president, David Lassiter, you could ask him, hey, is there an opportunity for this? How can nation of Hawaii work with, the university to do that? Or how can we use that then, if you do hold the spectrum and you are still using it, how can we use that to actually bring information and content and support to our community, even though you do still own it? How can we customize, what you're doing with that to work with us? And then, you may not have possession of it at that point, but at least then you are actually getting content provided and services and such. And so I wanted to ask Madeline, would you want to answer that as well? Did we lose her? Katie?
She's on, but muted. I'm going to try and
signal again.
Yeah, it might be oh, wait, there we go.
There, I'm unmuted.
Cool. Do you want the question repeated?
Yes, please.
Katie, can you do that for me, please, since you have it?
The gist of it is, and I've lost the exact wording, but essentially, can you give an example of a time that you have advocated for a policy or have done something that resulted in a policy change that then helped your network to grow or helped your community get access to a network?
So I would say that a policy change that I advocated for is that a lot of the federal funding was targeted to pre-existing telecommunications companies that had been in business for 3 years, which effectively shut out and prevented any new, especially small northern Indigenous companies, being able to access those funds. So they have recognized that they need to open it up. Initially, the response was, well, you can partner. You know, the problem with that approach is that, sorry, you know, Bell Canada does not want to partner with a northern or small Indigenous company, let alone a startup. Similarly, even our northern ISP does not want to partner. So there's been some more flexibility in allowing us to access those funds. Right now, it's probably not the big multi-million dollars, but at least there's traction there to recognize that it's blatantly unfair to perpetuate the existing large telecommunications company. So that was one that, you know, I pushed really hard for. I am seeing, you know, recognition now that that there needs to be either dedicated funds for the North or dedicated funds for Indigenous companies. Exactly how that, you know, policy change will, you know, exist as text, you know, or in writing, has yet to be seen.
Thank you. So I would say that, you know, I've been involved with a lot of policy work, obviously, especially the last decade, but for quite a while. And I did 2 terms on the Native Nations Broadband Task Force at the Federal Communications Commission, while Jeffrey Blackwell was the chief of the Office of Native Affairs and Policy, as well as Irene Flannery was the deputy chief of that as well. And, you know, we had, during the time when I was there, during the time when I was at Native Public Media and National Congress of American Indians, we were actually instrumental in getting the tribal priority for spectrum for FM licensing for radio, which is a really big feat in itself. The tribes can apply for an FM radio station. They don't have to wait for an open window, and it does not associate with a fee. If there's competition in the area for the same license space, the tribe takes priority over their own land, so the tribe will win that station opportunity. And a lot of new radio stations happened because of that. And we can reflect now that the tribal priority window has internally at the FCC then been applied now to 2.5 gigahertz and the EBS spectrum that is about to close on Wednesday. What is today? Tuesday, Thursday. It will close on Thursday, and that opportunity is due to a lot of folks on this call. A lot of folks that revolve around this space have been involved with that, and that was one of the major wins over the last decade. There have been many others, but that's the one that's most obvious at this point. We have about 10 minutes left. One of the things that was mentioned in the chat, and I think well, there's several things. So I think I'm going to call on Niniao, I'm going to call on Sally, and I'm going to just really quickly answer or just comment about what Bruce Fogelstrom is mentioned in the comments. There are a lot of organizations that are non-tribal that want to work with Indigenous communities, work with tribal communities. Obviously, there's a little bit of a lack of relationship between those organizations and yourself. And there's a trust issue there. Right? How do we know to trust them? Well, flip the page on your Zoom and see how many people are on this call. Somebody on this call probably knows a little bit of background about that group that's talking to you about trying to work with you. So reach out to your new connections, reach out to your connections in this space, reach out to connections that you have in government, find out about the group that's engaging you outside of their channel so that you can understand a little bit better about who they are. And then you're going to have to take a risk a little bit every once in a while, because if somebody truly does want to work with you and mean well, I mean, you should be able to walk them through that process and engage them to the level where you can understand their motives and stuff. So Niniao, please.
Hi, good morning. Aloha.
Morning.
I just wanted to give a shout out to, of course, you, Brandon, everyone on this call, Katie. So nice to see everyone. But in regards to policy advocacy, what you brought up about the tribal priority window and what Jeff Blackwell and Irene Flannery was doing at the FCC, you know, a long time ago, helped to position DHHL trust lands in Hawaii, you know, to apply for the 2.5 gigahertz. So I just want to say, when you think of policy over a long term, a continuum of decades or a continuum of years, you know, it's good to have planning, a long range plan, and then when it's time to execute, you know, you're ready to move to that next particular piece of the long-term plan. And so I think DHHL, as the quasi-sovereign trust lands in the state of Hawaii, and our trust beneficiaries and our fiduciary obligations to our beneficiaries, you know, the next 5 years, hopefully that once the FCC approves our application for licenses, you know, we'll see the further growth of network and broadband access for this particular pool of half-blood Native Hawaiian lessees. And so I want to just thank everyone's hard work over years and over decades to make sure that Native Hawaiians aren't forgotten, and that HUD just released the ICDGB, the Indian Block Grant for the CARES Act finally got released. HUD did that, the 100 million. So does that mean that those funds could be used to further broadband access for the Indian tribes who receive HUD funding? Can they use that $100 million to increase access in rural areas as a result of, or in response to, the COVID pandemic?
Great, thank you. Sally, please. You're on mute. There you go.
Okay, I'm not on. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make mention of a couple of wins that we had with our dealing with funding organizations for the fiber to the home project that we're rolling out. And one win that we got was the permission to sole source. And we had to go through a lot of hoops to get permission to do that, because for example, the communities where we work, we wanted to work with the local power authorities and use their line trucks and everything to deploy the fiber. But the funders were saying, no, you've got to get 3 quotes. Well, by the time you barge in equipment and line trucks and you know, pay guys to come in for a couple of weeks and then fly them out again, I mean, there's just no way. So we were able to make the argument that we would just get a quote from the power authorities. The second win that we got was for the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund has a provision for connectivity that they will allocate no more than $500 per household. It just didn't work. I mean, it was just not enough when you're dealing with a remote fly-in community. And myself and our deputy grand chief, we went and we actually got a meeting with Premier Wynne, the premier of our province, and her senior policy advisor, and she advised us to write to the Minister of Northern Affairs, provincial, and we were able to get $2,378 per home. That's what we ended up with, because there's just no way you can bring it in for $500. But just if you're willing to advocate and you're willing to put your face in front of the people that need to hear what you have to say, and just don't give up.
Very good. Good points. So let's see. So there's a couple of questions floating around that I can kind of maybe mold into one. Katie, did you have any more that prior to me missing the flyby?
No, the only other thing was that we had a request from a participant for the speakers to put their information, the preferred means of communication, in the chat. So Matt, I've put yours in there, thanks.
Yep.
And Brandon and Madeline, if it's all right with you all, I can put yours in as well.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Katie. So we have about 3 minutes left, and I'll just generalize this question. I won't call out specifically some of the stuff, but the question essentially is, do you know of consortiums that are working together to, like instead of an individual community to try to do something because they may not have the resources, the manpower, woman power, people power, seal power, I don't know, the amount of power to put it together because they just don't have enough resources. And a consortium may allow them to work more efficiently for the greater good for multiple communities, because this person has a tech person, this person has a funding person, this group has a different level of expertise, and together they become enough to be able to figure out how to pull this off for a region or for a multiple tribe scenario. There's a lot of intertribal organizations in the United States. I want to guess it's somewhere in the 22 range, but I belong to the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association. I'm sure Canada has some of those as well, and I think we can probably address that either in chat or in the last minute or two. But a lot of those organizations are currently working together to try to better opportunity for their region, right? For their entire region, not just the specific tribe, because they know, and we all understand this, especially growing a broadband network in a region that doesn't have access to broadband. You can't just grow your single reservation. You have neighbors that are 10 feet outside your border. You have neighbors that are a quarter mile, 2 miles, 3 miles. In Waimanalo, you have a whole slew of neighbors down the hill towards the water. In a lot of places like, let's say Coeur d'Alene, there's a lot of people that have lake homes and different things like that. There's a lot of people around you that also don't have that access just because of geography, rural status, whatever. So a lot of times bringing up your community, working together as a group can get you farther than you could working alone as an island. So a lot of times a consortium can help you do that. And I know in Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association, we have been very, very advanced by the fact that we have 20 tribes supporting a movement, voting on things, population, the numbers that we're presenting to legislature, to policymakers, to funding opportunities makes a difference, those demographics. I know AT&I, the affiliated tribes of Northwest Indians, Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association, United South and Eastern Tribes. There's many intertribal organizations working together on this. I'm sure there's some of those in Alaska as well. So there are opportunities to work as a group to solve some of these problems and create better solutions for a greater amount of people than just your small group. I hope that addressed that well enough. And I'm sure we'll pick that up in other panels talking about spectrum, talking about business development, community engagement, things like that. So with that, I believe we're coming up to our time. Katie, did you want to jump in and close out on?
Yes, I'd be happy to. And thank you guys so much for such a great conversation. Matt, Brandon, and Madeline, we really appreciate you kicking us off on this year's training. So brief, silent round of applause for you guys. And a huge thank you to all of our participants as well. It's so great to have you guys on the training and to see all of your comments in the chat. So as I mentioned at the beginning, if you missed part of this session, I'll put the recording up later. You can check out all the resources on the website. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week. In the meantime, let me know if you have any questions, if you had any issues, if you think of something that you'd like to talk about before next week. We're always around and we appreciate all of your time. So
I wanted to ask, Katie, you're going to capture the chat, right? Because there is a wealth of information as well as questions in there that we could address moving forward.
Yes, absolutely. I will make sure that the chat is recorded and that the private comments that people sent me are deleted before it's published anywhere.
Cool.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Aloha.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Meg Rich.